I believe that things work out for the best in the end. And as I said, that there is purpose in my life. And for me, I think it's music. It's healing through music.
Okay, welcome back everybody. It's time to get stuff done. And today I'm joined by Soojin Han. She is the first professional musician that I've had on the podcast. So I'm really happy to be able to welcome her. Soojin actually, although ethnically Korean, moved to the UK when she was just 2 years old. She's then lived in the UK for most of her life. And I had the pleasure of meeting her a couple of months ago at a conference here in Seoul. She actually gave a very colourful and very great speech around some of the things around learning. And I think that in the context of Get Stuff Done, given her international track record of winning prizes along the way from a very early age, I think she has a lot to share with us on the Get Stuff Done podcast. I'm sporting my Get Stuff Done t-shirt, so I'm ready to go. Soojin, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
And so I'm going to jump straight in with the question that I ask all my guests, and then we'll talk a little bit about your journey. Getting stuff done. What does it mean to you, and how do you make sure that you get everything done that you need to?
Well, I think it really depends on what I'm doing, on where I am, and what kind of situation I'm in. So nowadays, because I don't have the luxury of, just sitting down and having the time that I need to have and the time that I want to spend on a new piece, say, on preparing for a new piece. Recently, I had to learn a contemporary work in a very short space of time. And because I had so many concerts around that time, I was wondering how to plan everything so that I could actually manage to do that concert, because it was quite a big affair. So what I did was I asked for the orchestral score when I got my part. And so what I did eventually was I spread out the orchestral score and I studied it from the very beginning. So I was trying to figure out where my part fitted into the whole. And so that gave me a clear idea of the general picture of the piece, of the architecture, because that's one of the most important things in music, where the climax is, how to reach that point. And also I had a conversation with the composer as well, what the piece meant to her, what sort of background, emotional state she was in, what sort of things, what sort of situations she had to go through before composing this work, at the time of composing this work. And so I sort of incorporated that into how I was seeing the piece. Every night after a long schedule, I'd be looking at the score. And then in the in-between times when I could actually play a little bit, I was going through the technically tricky bits, the tricky parts of the work. And that sort of saved me a lot of time, because as a performer, it's really, really important. It's vitally important to be able to see a piece and how it's written on the score and to visualize it. And that is how you eventually perform it. So I think one of the most important things is mental practice for me. And the shorter time I have, the more mental time I spend on a piece to play.
So obviously you took up the violin from a very young age, and it's been almost your entire life, and so you have put so much time to get to this kind of world-class level. Does that then make it what you do now relatively easy? What I mean is, in the context of most people, when they do a project, they get to kind of expert level, and a certain amount of stuff they can do already relatively easily from the experience that they have. But from what you've just said, it sounds like every new piece requires that depth, that kind of time investment. How does that work when it comes to having to perform at the top level?
To be honest, I wouldn't say it gets easier.
Right.
Because,
Okay.
yeah. Because, there's a saying that the higher you climb, the more you see, and the more there is to do. I think it's like that. I mean, technically, of course, because, at this stage, after having played for, a long time, for so many years, you acquire that amount of, I suppose, foundational skills that you can then build upon. But these are only tools, and even these tools you really have to hone. You have to, you have to develop. So
Sure.
technically, it's really important that A, you don't get rusty, and B, that you develop in the way, in the direction that you want to. But you need to be able to use these tools. And now I think the bigger sort of, I wouldn't say challenge. I suppose it's always a challenge. When you dive into a piece, when you really immerse in a piece, and you're trying to get to the depths of it, there is so much more that you can see. But at the same time, not only do you want to get all that across, but you want to get that across in as simple manner as you can, because you want to stay true to the score. You don't want to embellish it too much.
Right.
And so it's always, at every stage of one's life, I think there are different challenges,
Sure.
but it's always it's a difficulty as well as a joy to take on.
So tell me, what does a typical day look like in the life of Soojin Han?
I wouldn't say there is a single typical day.
Okay. Okay.
So there might be a day where it's packed full of rehearsals. There might be another day when, like the day we met, for instance, where I'd be doing a speech in the morning, and then there'd be another event in the afternoon, and then there'd be a meeting in the evening, and they're all different kinds of things. And so I suppose I'm very thankful for the life I'm leading, because it's very, there are so many things that I'm asked to do, which can be a burden at times, like writing columns, giving speeches, performing, giving master classes, exactly, and meeting nice people such as yourself. And yeah, so all this is really enriching my life, and I'm very, very thankful to be able to do this.
So I mentioned in the introduction that you gave a very powerful speech at the Korea Times Forum a couple of months ago, but public speaking is not your professional vocation, although obviously performance is a big part of it. How long? When did you start public speaking, and how has that evolved as a part of your career?
Well, to be honest, I never thought that I would do public speaking in that sort of way. I mean, I think the most I thought I would be doing would be announcing encores at my concerts and telling the audience a bit about the piece. These were the things that I imagined myself doing.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, exactly. But do you know, actually, when I was in secondary school, I did speech and drama for a little bit. And I think that really helped, doing speeches later on in life. I mean, I didn't know at the time that I'd be doing anything like that, but I think that really gave me a sort of starting push. It sort of ignited something within me too. And yeah, so I think the speeches that I gave that I was very nervous about was a timed speech, because I'd never done a timed speech in my entire life up till that point. And that was for the Y Forum, hosted by MBN. That was back in, I think it was 2020. And so I had to do a 15-minute speech, and it was timed. There was this there was a timer in front of me, and I don't think I've ever been so nervous. Yeah, but it's a very different feeling. I mean, I think a lot of musicians would empathize with me in this respect, because it's much harder for musicians to speak on stage than to perform. So, even when I'm telling the audience about a certain piece on stage, there is so much energy that goes into it that afterwards I'm sort of drained, even before performing.
Okay.
But
And is that because when you're performing, you're letting the instrument do the talking, and in that sense, is that what you mean?
I think so. And also it's a different kind of communication because I think with music, well, as I say, it's a language without any barriers. It's a language that it's a universal language and it goes straight to your heart. Whereas I think with speaking, you need to process it. You know, the brain processes the words and then it sort of comes down. I think it's a different process
Yeah.
altogether. Maybe that is the more difficult part
Hmm.
for musicians.
What age did you start playing the violin, and what age did you realize that you might actually be incredibly exceptional at it?
I don't think I ever thought I'd be exceptional. Um,
You must have been told. You must have been told that.
I mean, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to be honest, yes, I was, but I don't think I ever comprehended how or what they saw in me. You know, the maestri, the musicians, the great artists that said you have something special. I don't think I ever realized what that was, but it was incredibly humbling to be told so, and
Mm.
even now to be told by members of audiences that my performances have changed their lives in a very powerful way. So I'm always thankful, and yeah, I was 8 when I started. Actually, the
Hey.
first time I
Okay.
held the violin was when I was 3,
Okay.
because my mum was a violinist. And so I grew up listening to her practice, and it was incredibly comforting to hear her play at home, especially when I was sick. And one day I remember I'd come down with a fever and I was staying in bed, and I heard her practicing, and it was the most soothing sound that I'd ever heard. And I was thinking, okay, I'd love to make a sound like that one day. I said, Mum, I really want to try and play the violin. And she had hopes of me being a violinist one day.
Okay.
She was harboring that secret hope.
Okay. But
Didn't
up until
tell
that
me.
point, she hadn't pushed you. She was.
No, not at all, not at all, because she had her own experiences with her mother. Her mother, so my maternal grandmother wanted my mum to be a violinist. And so she imagined that she was being semi-forced into playing the violin. And by the time my grandmother allowed her to discontinue playing, that was the point she realized that she had been in love with the instrument all along, but she just hadn't realized it. And she didn't want the same thing for her own daughter. She didn't want that process. So yeah,
Okay.
so she went to a completely different path.
I see.
And she succeeded.
Right?
Yeah. So, but
Absolutely.
that that first encounter with the violin wasn't so good because, well, it was quite heavy, for a 3-year-old to hold, and I wanted to make a sound ASAP.
Sure.
As soon as
Of course.
possible, but I had to learn how to hold the bow, and we had to pluck in the beginning, and I was wondering why I had to hold the violin like a banjo, and yeah, so all these things weren't um so uh interesting for me. But then I think it was on the second or the third day, I ran out of patience and I made a sound, and it was the single most horrible sound I'd ever heard in my whole 3 years. And so I think that came as quite a big shock to me. So I said, I'm not playing anymore. So that was that. So my first encounter ended within a week, and I was reunited when I was 8. I came to Korea on a short visit, went to my maternal grandmother's house, and she
Yeah.
was teaching a child who was about the same age as me, and
Yeah.
she was showering her with praise. And I was thinking, I think I can do that too. And that's sort of what
See. Okay.
motivated me in the beginning to reunite with the violin. And then I genuinely fell in love with it. Um, yeah. So when I went back to the UK, that journey continued.
Did and so did at what point was violin? I mean, for most people, an instrument is a hobby. It's practice a few times a week. At what point did it become the biggest thing in your life?
That's a really good question because I don't think that point ever came to me in a very powerful manner
Okay,
at all.
kind of
Because
evolved.
Um, yeah, it all came very naturally. So 8 months after I started in earnest, so when I was still eight,
Yeah.
I was accepted to go to the Yehudi Menuhin School, which
Okay.
is a school for prodigies. And I was very,
Sorry.
very
Within
fortunate.
8 months. Within 8 months of picking up the violin.
But actually, I think this was possible because it was the UK. It probably wouldn't
Okay.
have been if I'd been in Korea. I remember my audition very clearly. And well, first of all, we had to play the pieces that we had prepared. That all went fine. But the stumbling block was the sight reading, because in every exam there you have to sight read, and I think that was probably where I stopped in the middle of the sight reading piece. I stopped. I actually stopped, and then I thought, okay, I failed. But the music director said, at that point, he said, why don't you put your violin down? Just look at the score, look at the music for about a minute or two, and then play again. And that's exactly what I did. I looked at it and he said, just play it as you want to, just look at it and then try and create the phrases, etc. And yeah, so I thought, okay, why not? If I failed, then I might just well have a second chance. The second time I played without a break. It was fluent from the beginning to end. And at the end of that audition, as the director was leading me out, my mum was waiting for me. And he told her, you usually get the letter of admission, whether you fail or pass within a week. But he just said, we're accepting her. And my mother had heard the whole thing behind closed doors, and she had thought I'd failed too because I'd stopped in the middle of
Stop.
the sight reading.
Okay.
And she said, "What? Why? Why are you accepting her?" Because she didn't, she couldn't understand the thing. And the director said, at this school, we judge based on potential, and your daughter has tremendous potential. That was,
Wow.
I think that was where, yeah, this all started.
And how did that make you feel to kind of get that kind of recognition already at such an early age? Did it mean much to you? Did it initiate a kind of a stronger feeling towards the violin, or tell me about that.
I suppose it did subconsciously in a way, but I was never really aware of it consciously. I suppose because I had so many different interests. The academic side of school was
Hmm.
also a huge point of interest for me too. I loved all the subjects that I was learning at school. I loved ballet, and before going to the Menuhin school, I attended a school where there were many sort of after school activities like
Okay.
gymnastics, horse riding, whatever. So I just had so many different interests, and I loved reading too. So to be honest, playing the violin was just one of many different things that I loved doing. And while going down that path, I think I can say here that after a year and a half at the Menuhin School, I moved to the Purcell School, which is another music school. The reason was that the Menuhin School only offered boarding. I wasn't allowed to be a day's pupil there in the beginning. So that was actually really difficult for me as a child, and being apart from my parents. It wasn't the happiest of memories. And so after a year and a half, we decided that it would be best for me to go to a day school. And so I moved to the Purcell. And when I moved to the Purcell, I met the teacher who would be the greatest influence of my musical life, Felix Andrzejewski. And I think he was the one who really instilled a love for music in a very healthy way. I remember for the very first lesson I went to him for violence, for me at the time, especially, there was a formula for each lesson. So as soon as you go to your lesson, you pick up the violin, you tune, you play a scale, and then you play a study, and then you go into a piece.
Okay.
So that was just the given formula for all the students at the Menuhin School. And so when I went to him, he said, "So what would you like to play?" And I said, "Okay, I'll start off with spin." And he said, "No, I didn't ask you what do what you ought to play. I asked you what do you want to play." And that was
That was a
That was
little kind
such
of
a nice,
light bulb
yeah, that was
moment.
such a nice, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so of course I dived straight into my favorite piece, and that's how it started with this teacher. I mean, he always gave so much joy to his students, and only joy, but also he created a story for each piece, which he would tell us. He would go through a piece. He would let us know the historic background of the piece, and then he would add his own story to it. And so every piece became a sort of um, living story that we were telling the audience, and that we were sharing it. And it really made, I think, for me especially, much more involved in a concrete way than I did before. So the sort of elusive emotional parts of playing that became much more vivid somehow. And I think that was, yeah, I'm still very thankful to him to this day for everything that he gave me.
Yeah, it sounds what you're saying there is playing the piece exceptionally well, but then really delivering that extra, that emotional element to it is what's going to be the difference between kind of good and great, I guess. I'll dip into a bit more of the personal side, and myself, I have a Korean wife, and I have Korean British children, and we're shortly moving back to the UK. So for the
Oh,
first time, it will be for them living in the UK, having both been born in Korea. For me, after
yes.
14 years in Korea, moving back to the UK to a rather a different, certainly many things will have changed. So I'm ready for my reverse culture shock. You obviously moved to the UK when you were so young, you probably don't even remember. But how was it for you growing up? At that time, originally being Korean.
So there are some things that I do remember vividly. I remember my first day at nursery, and I tried to say something, but of course the only language I knew was Korean. So I blurted something out in Korean, and all the other children started laughing so much. And I was thinking, wow, am I in a different world?
On your first
So
day at
that
nursery
was my first
school,
day.
that can see why you still have that vivid memory. That's good. That would shape a lot of people. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. But at nursery you don't talk much, you just play with your given toy. So that sort of went very smoothly. And then when I went to school, actually I think first I would need to explain that when we first went to the UK, we were living on the Isle of Man for
Okay.
3.5 years because my dad, he majored in marine biology, so he was doing his postdoctorate at the University of Liverpool, but the marine faculty was on the Isle of Man, so we needed to be there full time, which was, I think, one of the greatest blessings for me, having grown up there, because you could see nature in all its splendor.
Let's
I could see.
let's
Mm,
just paint the picture for people around the world who've never heard of the Isle of Man. What we're talking about is a relatively small island nestled between Ireland and the mainland of UK. And it has
yeah,
a
that's
small
right.
population. I think the most famous thing to come out of the Isle of Man is actually the motorbike race, which
Exactly.
happens every year. But what you're saying is that as a child, the nature aspect was also wonderful.
Yes, yes, it was. You could see the sea in all its moods from the bedside window, and yeah, and if you'd be just one step out, and you would be in the meadows, and yeah, so it was really great. Why? How did I come to this?
So then you've been there for
Oh
three and
yes,
a half
going to
years.
school.
Then you moved somewhere else.
Yes, yes, exactly. But so school on the mainland starts at age 5, isn't it? If I'm not
Yeah, four and a
mistaken.
half, five,
On the
usually
Isle of
primary school.
Man,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. In the Isle of Man, on the Isle of Man, it was a year earlier, so I went to school at 4, and I was learning the alphabet. So on the first day, I went to school, and all the children, I don't think they'd ever seen an Asian person before in their. And so some of them asked me, they came and said, very timidly, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Korea." And they said, they looked at me, very puzzled expression. Said, "Where's that? Is that China? Africa? Japan?" And I said, "No, none of those." And
Yeah.
I just remember thinking, why don't any of these people know where Korea is?
Right.
And
Yeah,
then,
because
but I think,
your
I think,
country, you wouldn't really have a perception that other people wouldn't know where your country is.
no, especially at that age, I suppose, where,
Sure.
where your country had been your entire world for the first 2 years of for half your life, at age 4. But I think, yeah. And then there were other children who would come to me and sort of prod me. They think, it was as if they were seeing an alien for the first time. And yeah, so I had mixed experiences. But yeah, but after about a year, I became very, very good friends with everyone in my class. And so I was very sad actually to leave the Isle of Man just at the time when I was really settling
Settling
down
in.
very
Yeah.
well. I was making some really nice friends. And then we moved to London, which was a completely different story because, London is so, cosmopolitan, and there was children from completely different backgrounds, both ethnically, and it was a very, very different mix of people, of children, than I had experienced it in the Isle of Man, on the Isle of Man. And so I didn't have the same, it wasn't, it was very different. So I felt more accept, I wouldn't say accepted. I was part of the norm in London, but it didn't feel as special somehow once I was integrated into the community.
Okay.
Mm.
And so, I mean, what you've literally been experiencing as a Korean living overseas is the transition between the fast follower Korea, where we're talking 30 plus years ago, where things were made in Korea, and that's what Korea was initially only really famous for. Now it's
Yes.
leading cultural aspects in many ways, and the last, it just gathers more momentum with every passing year, it seems. Have you felt kind of almost a direct benefactor of that? I mean, you yourself, of course, have been part of that acclimatization of Koreans around the world, and so you, I think, should definitely take some pride in being one of those ambassadors. But how have you seen it, over the time that you've been living over?
Well, I think it was so what I was saying just now about Korea not being recognized anywhere. I was when I was in primary school, and then after, so when I went in for the Vinyavsky competition, I think I was the first Korean to reach the finals during the whole history of the competition. So that was a really big breakthrough. And after that time, a couple of years after that time, I think that was when, oh, actually, no, it was just before then, when the World Cup happened in 2002. No, it
Yeah.
was after that. Sorry, I'm getting my timeline mixed up. So it was after the Vinyavsky competition that the World Cup 2002 happened.
Yeah.
And then that's when people started to recognize Korea as a country, as a known country. And then a couple of years after that, I think the Korean wave, Hallyu, started,
Really kicked
reaching
off.
Europe. Yes, and then people would say, "You're Korean, so you must know all these, K-pop stars." And I'm really ashamed to say I wasn't really into the K-pop scene. So there were groups that I didn't know, that I'd never even heard of, and they were like, "How could you?"
A true classical musician
No, no, not at all. We're
downplaying
very
the
ignorant.
the K-pop element. Yeah. So, but what you're saying is that it is now a totally different experience to meet people and then for them to find out that you're Korean.
Of course, yes. I mean, when I went to, so for instance, 2 years ago, when I went to a small town near Munich that I'd never even heard of, to rehearse with my pianist for my recording, I stayed in an Airbnb place,
Hmm.
and the host, she had a daughter, the daughter was a huge K-pop fan.
Okay.
And the minute she knew that I was from Korea, she literally pounced on me. And she began, telling me all about, her favorite boy bands and what their names were. And she brought down a whole load of CDs and goods. And I was thinking, okay, so
Wow.
this is how Korea has developed. And I just felt a huge surge of pride.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, and you will have absolutely kind of ticked all the boxes for her because you look every bit like a Korean celebrity, right? So I'm sure that you are in fact very well known. So literally for her, that would have definitely been a very special moment. I'm sure. Um, but now are you're based full time in Korea? Is that right?
No, I go back and forth, but after maybe this is the time to say this, I had a period of medical treatment. So this it all stemmed from an injury, a head injury I sustained as a child, and it affected my jaw. And of
Okay.
course, because playing the violin didn't help, it aggravated the condition.
Right.
And there came a point where I couldn't even. So sometimes even when I taken a lot of painkillers, didn't help at all. And the pain just escalated year by year, and it came to a point when I couldn't stand it out any further. So I came to Korea and did a series of tests, and the doctor said that I needed to undergo surgery. And in the beginning, I was told that the process would take about a year and a half, but things didn't go so well. During the process, so it stretched out to 6 years. So that was quite a difficult time for me, especially as a soloist, because for musicians and especially soloists, it's very fast paced. The whole music world is very fast paced, and so even 1 year out of the scene is a big deal.
Right.
6 years, apparently there were people back in Europe saying maybe she's not ever coming back to playing, and around 3.5 to 4 years out of the 6 years, that's true, I wasn't able to play. But I think those 6 years away from the
Mm.
violin, away from performing, gave me something very special indeed. I think it gave me a renewed sense of thanks, I suppose, not just to be able to make music, which is the greatest blessing of my life, but even in the small things and in the day-to-day things, like just being able to breathe freely, being able to
Right.
eat, to be able to walk of my own free will, all these things after surgery. I think it just gave me a new perspective, and that I think that was something that I needed in a way.
But you didn't know that
And
you needed it.
yeah,
That's
so
right. I mean, it's the classic thing that you don't appreciate it until you lose it, and
yes, exactly.
you're saying that both the wonder and pleasure of music, but even just the survival as well, also being able to do basic things. Well,
Yes, of course.
that's now a number of years ago, but it sounds still absolutely transformative for you.
Yes, it is. And so after that period, it was actually I didn't know how to restart my career, and so I was wondering what to do. I
Hmm.
started. So I went back to the UK, and then COVID struck. But just before COVID, so I think the timing was really great too. I was invited to go. I don't know if you've heard of Domo, the classical music channel. Okay. Well, at the time, there were just a group of college students who wanted to make classical music more
Okay.
accessible to the general
Okay.
public. And so we had a trio concert coming up, but the members were made up of people who were well known in Europe, but not so much in Korea. And so we were invited to do an interview, but because we had to come into Korea at different times, we just did we recorded everything separately. And my performance and interview on that particular channel suddenly took off,
Okay.
and so that I mean, I'd never have thought that YouTube would be one of the ways that I could come back. But it did, and it was a huge blessing, and things in Korea started taking off from there. So I was really busy actually during COVID. I had a lot of concerts, not just for the public, but at the time, do you remember there were online concerts, streamed
Sure,
concerts without
sure.
audiences in these
Yeah.
big halls? It's so strange. And I likened it to unrequited love. Because I'm playing for someone that I can't see
Yes.
and I still
Right.
get the energy
They're
back.
out there. Somewhere out there.
Yeah. So,
So you talked about how you weren't sure how you could come back, but you absolutely have, in an even bigger way. What is it that is your drive? What is it that motivates you to get stuff done, to keep doing what you're doing?
hmm. Um, I I think, well, there are two things. As a Christian, I believe in a creator, in a loving creator, and I believe there is a purpose for my life and for the lives of everyone around me. And so even, if I'm walking down a path that doesn't feel, I believe that things work out for the best in the end. And as I said, that there is a purpose my life. And for me, I think it's music. It's healing through music, and it's not something that I believe that I can do of my own, with my own power or anything like that. I think it's something. So I believe that I'm a channel for something bigger to pass through, and that I'm just one of the tools, I suppose. Yes, for something great and for something good.
Wow.
So I think that's the greatest motivator for me. The second thing is the people who believe in me. So my fans, the loved ones surrounding who've always encouraged me in every way, and just as I said earlier on, people leaving feedback saying that they were on the brink of taking their own lives, but after hearing the performance, they changed their mind. They said they've regained hopes of living, and that they will continue to do so. And these kind of positive remarks, this that kind of feedback, that gives me great strength. And even, of course, there are times when uh, it's like my battery's empty.
Mm, right.
Yeah, I just want to, just let go of everything. But I think those two factors are the biggest things that keep me going.
Absolutely. Leading from that into a future orientation question. What does the let's say the next couple of years look like for you? What are you hoping to do?
Wow, non-stop, actually, yes.
Get more stuff
After
done.
a few more concerts, yes. But I'm looking to sort of divide my time, I suppose, with, I think, the balance more in favor of concerts abroad now, because I spent quite a lot of time in Korea during COVID, and I'm actually going to Poland later this month for a
Okay.
concert and master classes, and then the US in September, and I'll be going to Germany, into Austria next year as well,
Okay.
and into the UK too. Yeah, so I think I'll be dividing my time more towards Europe, I suppose. But apart from that, I don't I don't want to plan too much, because till now nothing has gone according to plan.
Till now
And
means
so I sort of,
till now means
yes, in my entire
okay.
life. So
I had a
I've
guest
sort of,
say, sorry, I had a guest say
no, go, please,
their
go ahead.
advice was plan less. Be more
Yes.
open to whatever comes your way. On the other hand, I do think you need to have an idea of where you want to go at the same time.
Yes,
How,
of course.
how do you reconcile that?
I think it's always very important to have, what's the best word to put for this? Because goal somehow seems to, I suppose it's goals, dreams. Yeah,
Direction?
I can't think of direction. Yes, I do have quite a lot of things that I want to to do, to be involved in.
Okay.
And things, as I said in my speech, trying to help Korean society be more inclusive. That's one of the main things that I want to be involved in. And I think in my field, that the way that I can help create ripples in my field is being involved in projects with people who have disabilities, with really talented people who have disabilities and who aren't being included in a healthy manner. So that's something that is very close to my heart. It's a project that's close to my heart, and that's something that I will continue to do. And yeah, I suppose just going in the direction that I want to go as a performer, as a teacher as well, in some respect. Yeah, and so I have a lot of things that I want to do, and I suppose it would be. I mean, I did say that I won't plan, but things will keep coming my way, and this is what I believe anyway. And I think, yeah, exactly. So if I sort of keep my direction, but then integrate everything into that direction and see how that wave, I suppose, leads me, then I think I'll be going a way that I'd be very happy with, but which opens up completely new, wider prospects. And I think that that's the beauty of life, isn't it?
I think so. And I don't have anything more to add to that, because I think you put that so eloquently, and I think that's what gave me such a good impression when you were speaking at the Korea Times Forum. I think what your presentation then, now what you've just described, this kind of noble cause, I sincerely hope that you can keep doing that. I think it's something that is absolutely needed, and it's wonderful that you have a platform that you are using for the good in that way. So on that note, I'm sorry to say that we are out of time, Soojin. But if people want to, probably they've become your fan after listening to us speaking at the last 40 something minutes. But if they want to, reach out to you and kind of know more about what you do and see more of what you do, what would be the best way?
Well, I have an Instagram account. Should I what? Soojin Han?
We can link it in the
Okay.
in the thing here. So, all right.
Yes, and
Thanks
I
so much,
also have a
everybody.
YouTube channel where you can. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks so much, Eugene. Take care, and remember,
Thank you,
get stuff
Gordon.
done.